Hello everyone and welcome to my evening painting demonstrations. And today I'm working in acrylic, and this term I'm developing some paintings based on um, some of the Scottish mountains. We've got some beautiful Glencoe Valley. We've got the hidden valley actually here. So we've got Glencoe that way, we've got the main road somewhere there. So we just come up this to the tops. Apologies, I've got myself in there. I'm not actually going to paint myself in there, but it's just a really nice view. That was a really good angle. I really like some of the higher peaks. I can see the open view, so I thought I'll use that one for my piece today. I'm using ochre background, so I just use a little bit of ochre and tiny bit of violet just to keep the darkness with an ochre. Actually, it does look quite similar, but by the time I add some white to it and mix, it becomes quite light. Actually, I've got a lighter version of it, so that's what sort of happened if I would just paint it ochre and white. So it's a lovely color, but perhaps maybe a little too bright for what I wanted. So experimenting with background colors could be really exciting. Actually, I've got another version of my ochre background, so I've got a bit more of a darker, almost reddish in color. I think that's much better color. You can see it here, and that's very light. So variations helps us do different things. If I'm painting on a lighter background, that might be much more sunnier, much more bolder colors, maybe of the of summer when I want to put loads of greens. So a little bit more darker tone gives me more of a dramatic atmospheric mountains. Now on my palette, I have some white, ochre, orange, crimson, violet, ultramarine, phthalo green, emerald green would have been fine as well, and a dab of black. So if I'll start sketching with a little bit of violet, just diluted version of it, I'll start planning my composition. Now there are a few things I'd like to change. So my photograph is always a support and a starting point. Support for information, for some of the exciting areas, but it doesn't have to be painted the same way. I tend to bring more color or exaggerate some of the shapes, move things about. So for example, on the foreground here, I've got quite a big wide ledge. Actually, it was only about that size, and there is a shade drop on the other side. So probably taking the camera quite higher up to see that. So I'm thinking of probably reducing that volume of that path, maybe seeing more of the mountains. Also quite like the darker cloud, but again, it didn't quite pick up on the camera, but I'd like to bring it a bit more darker to balance all the shadows on the mountains. So photograph is a supporting piece, but not just a copy from what I'm interested in. Right, so let's plan. Perhaps if I were to start my height of the mountain somewhere here, and as I already said, drop this ledge maybe somewhere here as well. I have my kitchen towel if I wanted to wipe anything off. It's a nice good tool. Violet against the ochre background gives me just a nice brownish color, which will be hidden later on. So I'm starting at the height of the mountain, and I'm actually going to find my valley, an approximate horizon for the distant blue mountains. Let's see where that valley is going to be. If I can drop it a little bit lower, as that space is stretched now. Sorry, kind of been shrunk, so that space is stretched now. So let's see. Okay, maybe something in here will come up actually a little lower. So when I'm doing my first planning and sketching, I move things about. I keep things developing and adjusting. Okay, so that might be my valley here. And let's see how those slopes will come up. Okay, where some of these peaks might be, and perhaps this one. Okay. So try not to be rigid when you start. Working out a composition in a smaller scale on a piece of paper is good as well. But also keeping the painting quite dynamic as you develop it is a good kind of process. It's a life process, adjusting it, seeing it, how it could be changed. Okay, perhaps this one could go even taller, deliberately exaggerating shapes. Okay. So I've got nice dramatic effect here. And also when you're in landscape, you take things very different to when you look at them on a photograph. Well, first of all, I'm not a photographer. My camera skills in comparison to contemporary photographers uncomparable. But what we see, we often zoom in and feel really excited about. And then the photograph sometimes comes out quite flat. So it's those hints of memories of what we've seen. That's what's really exciting. Okay, just checking how far this peak is going to be in comparison to this one. Okay, maybe this one will have to go gently up still. Okay, maybe down a bit more. Okay, slightly higher perhaps. Okay, so then this one will stand out in its darkness, and that one could remain high, but perhaps I'll just keep it paler. Okay, and then this one is overlapping, so they're just moving one behind another. I've got a lot of lines, they're drying. Can I turn them into a shape? Can I turn them into more darkness in the shadow? Yeah, just help yourself with use of tone. Okay, and I'm interested in creating some of these lovely shadows. And how the rock forms these gullies. Makes me really observe and look. Okay, and then they gently go up as well, changing an angle. And perhaps here I will see the peak a bit more, which I thought I might hide. Okay. So just increase the height of the mountains a bit, and perhaps just break down a little more here. There, the valley slope as well. Right, and then my cloud, quite like that lower overhanging shape of the cloud here. Let's goes coming down, and I think I might just, there's tiny bit of a darkness in the corner, so I think I might just bring it lower and keep that darkness here as well. Okay. Right, anything at the front? I think it's more of the direction of those broken rocks and how they will eventually create more of a path and a little more tension. Quite like the idea that they are changing almost like in the radiating pattern. Brings our composition a bit more central as well. Right. I think that might be enough information for my initial plan. There will be some distant mountains. Some of the blues will come up. I think they're quite small for me to work into the line there. Probably we'll just do it straight away in color. There's a lovely another peak here. But again, this will be slightly different color, so that will be identified in color. Right, let's move on into color. Right, so I'm picking up now a larger flat brush, and I'm going to start with some of them. I think I'm going to start with the sky. Larger strokes will give me quick coverage, and it's also less details. I need to start thinking into shapes first in color. So if I've got some white, I'm gonna go for some ultramarine and a little bit of tiny bit of black. So I've got more of an indigo. Okay. Just mixing it well. I'm going to test it against my sky. Right, so I want something. This is probably going to be my part of that gray sky. A little bit of light first. Now my mountain is going to be quite dark. I want the cloud to be slightly stronger in darkness. And I can work into this area of sky and light after. Yeah, with some extra light, with some extra even color perhaps. But for now, let's develop some of the shadows. Now, if I work quickly, my acrylics will remain damp, and it's much easier to merge some of the colors. So that's going to be not all of that darkness, but that freedom of strokes will be quite good. Okay, that's reflecting a little here. So if I were to put something else underneath of my board, hopefully I will stop that. Okay. And let's add a tiny bit more white. So I'm just working within my grays here. And my white, if I were to go slightly diluted lighter tone, I can see some of the ochre background underneath. It gives that rainy, wet feel, that nice, soft and sharp edges. Okay, a little bit of extra white. I haven't washed my brush, still full of grays. but just bringing some variety of tone. Okay, perhaps merging it a little more. Perhaps there will be some rain in there or something. Okay, just dropping that light a little bit lower. And just a little more playful kind of brush strokes gives us more life to the painting. Okay. Dark, I do like some darkness in here. Right. Now let's have a tiny bit stronger blue at the back. If I'll go now for more direct ultramarine. And even if it will be too strong, let's give it a test and a try. I'm just using some of my gray to just gently dilute it. Okay, the paint on the border is wet, so it keeps it a little more settled, which is fine. Okay, and again, the paint's still wet on the back, sorry for the sky. So a little bit more sharpness, a little bit more softness is very welcome. Can go a little bit up and down to see if I can perhaps suggest distant ranges. Okay, that varieties is good. When the layer will dry, perhaps can add more stronger, lighter clouds, or just the kind of the connection of that white within the grays for the clouds, just to have a little more variety of tone as well. Right, blues are there. Let's have a look on anything else, perhaps cooler. While I've got my blue on the brush, perhaps some violet and ultramarine. Tiny bit of white. And I'm going to block some of my mountains shadows, which will stand out strong and dark, but we need some initial shadows. Just going to mix a little more paint. Okay. And nice and strong. Let's just work out some of the big shapes, and perhaps even again slightly runny, slightly more solid. See if that diluted nature of the paint will create a nice effect. Okay, any other shadows? If I'll use a little more crimson. So I'm moving from one color to another. So I was on the grays, went into blues, moving into some of the violets, moving into the purples. Okay, let's find some of that darkness. Okay, now the proportion of them is going to be slightly different to my photograph because I gained the height on my mountains. So I'm just looking for those darker exposed rock, perhaps change in vegetation. So I'm identifying some of the immediate shadows and exploring the color. I can see some of the nice depths of the color as well. And also I'm playing with the way I'm using the brush. So it might be dragging it sideways. It might be smudging it. So it's not just even application. Okay. Some of these rocks will be based on top of some of the shadows and pit. Tiny bit more coolness from my ultramarine. Oh, so it's getting quite grim and quite dark. And I'll slowly start building up the tones on top. I also can see a little more shadows in a distant ridge, parallel to kind of to this ridge valley. But because it's further away, I need to make it slightly lighter. So if I add a bit more white to my violet and ultramarine, let's test it out. That's too light. Definitely want it cooler there. And again, as I'm developing some of the shapes, I can extend the color. I can bring it further. So I'm looking out for some of these shadows. Okay, and my ochre background is really working well with the cooler colors straight away here. Okay, can I test some of the paler blue purples here against the shadows? Okay, just looking a little too similar. So let's see what's that will bring for later. Just don't like the too similar in size. Okay. Right. And let's move to slightly more warmer colors. So if I start adding some ochre to my violet, a little bit of white. So I could start moving on to a different group of colors now. Just for now to block some of the shapes at the back, perhaps. A little bit reflecting for me here. Then So then I can develop the focus of light. So on the photograph, we have a lot of, there's exciting yellowish green here. There is a nice valley. There is no overall focal point of where the main light is, or how the colors might be distributed, or how shapes link into each other. So I'll have to develop all of that. I'm just using a little bit more crimson. Just test it against some of these slopes. Okay, maybe a little more orange and violet. See how that's a little too warm. Maybe for this side. Cooler version. With some violet, might be a bit better here. Just want to test it, want to check how the colors work with ochres, how the colors will start working with the mountains, shadows. Stronger orange. Might also have a little collection of colors I'm using and just test them and have a reference of different browns. Okay. Golden blood orange. Just somewhere here at the top. So I'm testing the colors, as some of the colors will be still under painting and some perhaps will remain, but I think most of the colors so far under painting colors. I'm also checking the connections. Okay, so this orangey color is another version. In the past, I had questions. How do I know which color to go for? How do I know how to break it down into the shapes? I try to evaluate if I've got a very similar color going on from the camera. There will be different because one reflects the light under one angle, another one is under another one, even if it's an overcasting type of day and light. So I can make a decision can I make one side a little bit more cooler, and maybe another one a little bit more warmer? Can I go for more shades of those warmer browns and violets? Can I go for more cooler versions as well? So it's making a decision. You can make that decision by testing the colors on your surface. Also, acrylics is exciting media to paint in because the layers dry very quickly. So if I were to paint it same view in oils, it might be a little harder to go with cool and warm colors. And mixing them together, you'll have just loads of muddy, dirty areas. You need to be careful to mix them at the right time or paint them accurately without too much smudging. Okay, let's just see how this orange will settle here as well. With watercolors, we have to really plan ahead our colors and how we're placing them in their order. So acrylics in a way is more versatile. You can develop and your strategy, your plan as you paint. Okay, so that might be a nice connecting color. Okay. Right, then let's cover the last, maybe the ledge here. I was thinking of using a small amount of green and some ochre, a little bit of white. Just want to make it more into the yellowish green. And perhaps mix it with some of the orangey colors as well. And then I'll have more or less full coverage of the surface. Now you'd say, why did I cover all the surface if I needed, well, why did I paint the background in ochre? Well, first of all, the background color helped me to start, painting in a white background is much harder. It's much harder to apply colors, which you basically will need to cover the whole piece before you start uniting your colors. Ochre already united my painting from the sketching stage. Okay, so those are my strokes here. And it's at any point, could have taken it more into the ochres, and also little gaps of the pure color still remaining, which would be quite nice to see if they will disappear or not. It's when we're applying a bit more diluted color. Even part of the diluted violet here was there. Again, if I would have done that on a white background, we would have had a totally different effect. The runniness in the sky. Okay, so using that background does help us. Okay. Quite like some of that softness here So I'll be now just dividing these areas with some greens and slowly making decisions of how much of current colors will be going. Quite like that messy corner, messy light and darks, and then it's partially disappears. Okay, little stroke here or there, maybe a larger stroke, and then just stepping away. And I tend to squint my eyes quite a lot and see the overall effect. I'm not sure about this very dark gap. Okay. Right, I think I'm ready to start moving on using a little smaller brush as well. Let's have some attention on the valley. Right, I'll go for my smaller filbert brush. Don't have to use even any water. I can go straight away with some white and some color. So I've got some ochre, bit of white, a little bit of orange. So I've got that lovely yellowish, exciting, bold color. And I might not go directly with it, but placing it as a reference point, how much lighter shapes could go. I think I might put some of that lighter tone within the valley as well. So I'm almost again testing it. If I just place it on my lighter ochre background, you can't quite see it. So I'm testing it against different environments, and then it will give me a reference point on the palette, how much darker the other colors will be or will have to be. Okay, that still will be quite light. Okay, some of that stream. So if I'm making that decision, having one side a little bit more warmer than the other, so this one will have a bit more extra coolness. Okay, I think perhaps this peak is a little too high. We'll see. Things could be adjusted in height. So now I'm working into color. I'm interested in the display. Okay. So I'm doing the design of shapes and design of color groups. So that's quite bold and strong. Okay, and let's have a softer version. Using a tiny bit of violet. Maybe a little bit of pink. Let's have a look. I want to see a little more warmth. It's slightly too dark. Sorry, light for the area. Just make a darker version. Okay, still not dark enough. Okay. Perhaps not light all. Continue. Shapes. So there might be smaller nuances coming in. Okay, maybe some of that is still light. Okay, it's a little reflecting still. See the shape, so I might just be a little more patient. Slightly more coolness. See if we can get a tiny bit more ultramarine. From some of the slopes. A bit too strong ultramarine on its own. Okay, but that might be too dark color. Okay, again, just testing my colors, looking at some of the slopes and the shapes of the slopes. I think this one is quite strong, so we'll need softening, of course, but can I use this color elsewhere? Borders. This color looks very different to the same color on opposite slope. Maybe that coolness will be better, but warmth is good. Standing out there as well. Warm and cool colors under this grayish tone will just be peeping through enough to show that variation, but it's not going to be too jumpy anymore. Okay, so maybe let's take another photo of this stage. This. Right, so I want to work now on these orangey mountains. So if I were to get back to some of that violet at the back, actually this violet, and then just the form and merge the colors a little better. Violet, some ultramarine. Ones here with a color. Okay, so once we tested some of the colors, can start connecting them. So yes, I want to focus on them on this segment. Started with the back, takes me elsewhere, that's okay. And I just bring myself back when I'm ready for it. But kind of that traveling blue will have a good connection elsewhere. I think I just need a little clear colors here. Okay, after as well. Dips and rises. Okay, that's good. We've got some nice distant light, warmth of the light. Right, let's test this color against somewhere here. Maybe a little darker version. Quite like this light coming through from behind. The changing environment, constantly changing light. So it is good to have that movement. white patterns. So then this one remains the only one. Okay, and anything else here to look how that lovely blue violet just keeps this warmer form immediately, more three-dimensional as well. So I'm not so much looking at my photograph unless I need a form or I need more information from it, but actually I'm more looking at my painting now. A little more steeper. And the shape, perhaps that one will just get further behind then. I thought. A little unexpected light here, which I think is quite exciting. We'll see how it dries. Maybe it's will be too much, too solid. It almost looks like a little bit of cloud in the valley. And if that's something I'll go for, it might be interesting to work with. That lower ground cloud, I think it's quite exciting. Okay. Right, let's come back to my mountain here. So slightly more violet, maybe a little more orange and ochre. Just test. Okay, it's too light. So much smaller developments now. I think I'll change the angle of these slopes. I think I want to make them a little more dramatic. Fresher orange and ochre, something in between. The violets and the orange and ochres. I like the softness, the blend. Okay, that's not quite medium darkness. Bring this one slightly lower. And then back to some lighter tones and lighter colors. Okay, this orange could be tamed as well. That's too light. But only when it's dry, so I think I will on the orange boldness, at least partially. Okay, that's the boldness on. Colors go from one into another. Also, it's really good practice painting, repainting, and developing the vision. Yeah, that's something exciting as well. Can I plunge a little more light here, or would it start competing too much? I prefer to test it. Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so if in the early stages of demonstration, I have more detailed commentary. The later stages of demonstration, I tend to go quieter because I'm checking not what's happening in that particular area I'm painting, but also checking the whole piece in one go and making decisions for the whole atmosphere of the painting. This is quite nice light. I think I might let it dry and see if that settles quite intensively, or like this one's dried now, much more duller. So if this one will dry a little bit duller, this will be exactly what I want then. And that's one is settling now as well, because it was partially diluted color. Even that white clouds, that's all settled because the paint was more diluted, and it's good because it's kind of gives you that test, and then you can come back with the full strength of that light or that color. If I'll just have a river on my stream gently glistening at the bottom of the valley. Sometimes might be another bank, it sometimes might be just a bit more flatter shape. Okay. That's probably will dry again paler. So that's okay. Tiny bit more light pigment, but not as exciting color. But some light. A little more volume. Just stepping a little bit more away from the painting, leaning away from it. I do want to see how this area dries and if it will lighten up. Another alternative, I'll put actually some light on my grass. Let's try that out. So some white, some ochre, a little bit of phthalo green. If it's not going to be yellowish enough, I might get some cadmium yellow, but let's just see how that works. Creating a little bit of a rough surface, almost as if you can see some of the leaning texture of the grasses. And then I might bring my sponge and just use a damp corner, just a bit of water for this. So it's just that extra light clouds. Just allowed a little bit of extra light here. And again, just stops. Okay, that's quite exciting. Let's see how that dries. Right, let's give the mountains a little break and a little bit of drying time. Come back to the sky. Right, now I'm going to have some fresh white. And if I'll use just diluted white, maybe a tiny dab of ultramarine, I think that's might be too much. So we're just off white. Don't know if you can see it on the screen, but because I'll go over some darker grays and blues, we'll still see it bold. Sort of cloud brooding there. Some lower level, some smaller ones. Again, using a sponge, especially if I clean it and we don't want any green on the sky. A little bit of softening of the borders or making it less defined. Okay. And oh, still something close. If I'll dilute my paint, it will initially appear quite light, but because it's diluted, it will dry paler. Still, I can soften the borders. Okay, and fancy adding a little more light, perhaps somewhere here. Just sponge makes it merge even more. Slightly different scale of clouds, but not all of a similar size. Just looks a bit too calm cloud for such a dramatic light. Okay, more wind going in there. And in this area, okay, so something more suggestive. Okay, and also I wanted a little bit more pale white and some of that. I quite like that cloud fog, lower cloud perhaps. Just put in a little bit more. It's very diluted paint. It will be much more transparent as it dries, just softening it as well. Mainly its ends. Yeah, it's quite a sharp border. Can I do anything else here? Okay. It's coming on. Now I want to make this little peak to come back and maybe start working into this mountain as well. Right, because that's at the back, can do with a little extra light. Maybe more pink than orange. So my crimson, tiny bit of violet. And if the peak will remain darker, maybe the base, not the base of, which offsets the close to us silhouette. Okay, give us that range. Right, this one might need to merge a bit more. Can define my shape here as well. Then like the outline triangle. Let's try quickly. It's okay. Again, it's a lost and found edges. Maybe it's much more defined peak on the photo. So, or I can lighten some of the mountains, the back. Or I can make this ridge less important. I think if I were to add a tiny bit of light to that blue. That's quite good. I'm not sure if I like this one now. I've got another peak that the back lightened up. Okay. Perhaps a little bit of cooling off for this peak if I'll put a pale purple or pale violet ridge. Because the area is dry, I can quite happily experiment with the new color because I can wipe it off. Let's see that. Kind of gives it a shape and a shadow still. It doesn't look as burnt. And I also know it will dry tiny bit more darker. There's something there, but doesn't feel like it has enough darkness. So let's see how it dries. So nuances of improvements, nuances of layers. That coolness is only small there at the tops. Too light. Okay, let's use a sponge. Take some of this off. And I'll repeat the process. So I'd like another think if I were to put some violet in there, maybe a bit less. Just drawing the shiny surface. Still a combination, but there's no shape to it. Got nice depths, and it's a bit more stronger color as well. So many similar stripes again. Right, let's give it another thought. I'd always prefer to give it a go rather than say something as not too sure, don't want to spoil it. I'd always give it a go and test it. Yes, a little wider gap here. Size, top. Okay, and then a slightly more lighter ridge. Okay. Just seeing how it's changing. And that painting other pieces, I will already have some experience with color. I might have different tasks for myself, might go for different color scheme, might look at different compositions. And if I were to go for similar colors, that will be a variation of of that light variation of what I'm doing here now. Okay, that's a nice shallow valley as well. Okay. And bring that light back. Just don't want this area to be taking too much attention from the valley. No, but it's okay. I want this bend a little less dipping in. Just subdivided some of the shapes. Okay, getting much more clearer now. Something always very attractive about the highlands and being in the mountains. That vast space, that most wonderful light, that opened areas of light moving. I think I might need it. The cooler color. I think shapes are good. Maybe a bit too warm. Right, anything else I can do with the mountains here? Right, I think I can work with extra shadows and some extra blue. So let's go for some ultramarine. Let's go back for some violet. Maybe even a little bit of violet and fellow green will give me a nice darker tone and a deeper shadow. See. Too much details here. We want that volume of details remaining further in the valley, but I can afford a stronger shadow. Getting some of that shadow appearing and smudging into the environment. Get my sponge. And then perhaps too bold, rich. And just these marks makes everything come close to us and the scale of everything becomes different. So let's come back. Let's have a little retreat. Here the marks are a bit similar in size as well. So the scale of distance is changing. So a little bit more gentler. A little more gentle approach. Because this point is quite close to us, and what's in the valley, that's miles away. So to create that space. A different light. Okay, that's interesting. Is that the fog? Is that the coolness? Is that quite like that? You put a little bit of warmth on top of it, but I think that's semi-transparency of cool and shadows. I think that's work. Now I'm not too sure if I want to keep that one too warm, or maybe part of it could be cooler. Okay, let's keep on going. Sharpness is there, but it's less drawn close to us. Immediately put further distance away from us. Okay, let's put distance closer again. So let's lose it. Shadow slightly over. The steepness a bit more again. And just obscure enough. Details maybe a little more. Yeah, that becomes much more believable now. I can even put a little glimpses of warm light when it dries there. Right, and I did want to see a little more of a drop at the bottom. The warmth is still there, but it's less obvious. Yeah, definitely will top up tiny bit of warmth in there. And let's touch this area as well, just tiny bit more white. And I'll probably then stop for today. So the extra warmth is coming back in the valley here. But gently. tiny bit of lightening up of the river. And we'll give that direction as well. This is a river, or if it's just a light, or it's kind of more of one link. Perhaps the little highlight on the ridge. Okay, that's a nice suggestive element. Just little whispers of the orange. And these little ledges will spring up. Okay, it's too strong, just brushing it, sponging it. Maybe a little too strong. Ideally, I want all of this one being much drier. Otherwise, if I'm sponging things, it will start lifting. Okay, that's a bit calmer. Suggestive as well. Stronger. Extra fiery. I think that's quite nice. Anything else? Storage. Pale a hint of oh, blue. I quite like some of that. Maybe lifting it a little higher to have that connection. I've hardly done anything on the front, but I think it's just enough information for that shadow. Quite diluted paint with a big brush. Now I need a bit more solid. That's gonna dry out quite full of texture. So maybe then less diluted but darker version of it. Very settled hint of color. It's the height of the mountain. Do like this bit. Stronger darkness then. Flattens it again. Okay. Right, so as the paint is here a bit wet, it's harder to see and harder to make a quicker judgment to lift it off, just in case it doesn't work. I might leave it as it is. Let's do light orange. We might keep it for now as it is and see how it will look in the morning. Because evening light as I'm painting can be when we paint in the evening light, it can just give us slight different effect of how we see colors. Now that's didn't come out either well. Okay, then as I'm starting to, it's best to put something and take it off rather than not to give it a go. But if it doesn't work, there's no point of leaving it there. Quite like some of these pale blues again, perhaps. That merge of something in between of the warmth and coolness. And that finer balance. I think I'm slowly getting there. It could be almost there. It might not be. If I were to take a photograph now and take a photograph of the final painting, there might be just a tiny, tiny, tiny changes of light, of the merging of the colors, or there might be something will just shift a little bit. But it might take longer than maybe half of the painting today have done. So when people ask me, how long did it take you to do a piece? Well, majority of it, 90% of it, maybe a few hours, but then finishing touches takes us longer to play with. Right, I'm going to stop at that for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you got some ideas on some use of color and how to lift off the colors and how to get some inspiration from a little bit more plainer photo. I hope you might give it a go. Thank you very much for today.
Okay, thank you.
You're very, very welcome.